Oftentimes, when people hear Rihanna, they immediately think of music and celebrity. But what they don't know is that other than being a globally loved music star and celebrity, Rihanna also built a $2.8 billion beauty empire alone. And unlike most celebrity brands, this one wasn't built on borrowed influence. It was built on ownership, strategy, and a founder who refused to follow the rules. Sounds unreal, right? I'm sure you're wondering how she did it. Stay with us as we tell you all you need to know about Fenty Beauty. The problem no one wanted to fix. Before Fenty Beauty came into existence, the cosmetics industry looked very different. There were lots of luxury makeup brands that had dominated the market for decades. Brands like L'Oreal, Estée Lauder, and Dior controlled billions in annual revenue and shaped the standards that defined beauty across the world. On the surface, the industry looked glamorous and innovative, as new products were launched constantly. Advertisements filled magazines and billboards. Beauty counters sparkled inside luxury department stores. But underneath the glamour was a quiet problem no one at the top seemed interested in fixing. And the problem they had isn't one you can ever guess even if you tried. But don't worry, I'll tell you. The problem the cosmetic industry had was that most foundation lines offered only 10 to 20 shades. For millions of women around the world, especially women with deeper skin tones, finding the right foundation often meant compromise. Some mixed multiple products together just to create a shade that came close to matching their skin. Others simply settled for something slightly off. It wasn't just an oversight, it had become a thing in the industry. No one saw it as a problem that needed to be fixed. For years, the cosmetics industry believed that the majority of customers shared similar skin tones, and they operated based on that assumption. Product lines were designed around that narrow view, leaving so many women feeling invisible in a market supposedly built around beauty and self-expression. And because the system had worked for decades, no one saw a reason to challenge it. But someone watching from the outside noticed the gap, and she understood it better than anyone. Can you guess who noticed it? Rihanna grew up on the Caribbean island of Barbados, surrounded by a wide range of skin tones. Different shades, different undertones, different cultural ideas of beauty. Diversity wasn't a concept, it was simply everyday life. But when she stepped into the global fashion and entertainment industry, something immediately stood out. The beauty products she encountered didn't reflect that diversity at all. Whether she was backstage at a fashion show, filming a music video, or preparing for a red carpet appearance, the same problem kept appearing. Makeup artists often had to mix multiple foundations together just to create a shade that worked. Even for one of the most famous women in the world, the perfect match wasn't always available. That experience stuck with her. Again and again, she saw talented artists improvising solutions to a problem that shouldn't have existed in the first place. And slowly, a simple question began to form in her mind. If the world is this diverse, why isn't makeup? By the mid-2010s, Rihanna had already become one of the biggest stars in the world. Her music dominated charts, her fashion choices influenced trends. Her cultural presence reached millions of people across continents. But instead of attaching her name to a quick celebrity product line, she started thinking much bigger. She didn't want to launch just another brand. She wanted to solve the problem she had seen for years. Not with a small adjustment, but with a structural shift that would force the entire industry to rethink how beauty products were created. What she envisioned wasn't a side project built on fame. It was something far more ambitious, an empire built on inclusion. To include women from every part of the world. But that's not all about Fenty Beauty. The next thing you'll find out about Fenty Beauty will blow your mind. A launch that broke the internet. Most celebrity brands usually follow a predictable formula. A company develops a product, the celebrity lends their name, posts a few photos, and appears in advertisements. In return, the celebrity receives a small royalty, usually somewhere between 5 and 10% of sales. It's an easy arrangement, but it rarely creates real power or long-term wealth for the celebrity attached to the brand. They only become the face of the product, not the owner of the business. But someone had to break away from the celebrity brand trend. When Rihanna began thinking about entering the beauty industry, she had no interest in following that model. She wanted something completely different. Instead of licensing her name to an existing cosmetics company, she pursued a partnership that would allow her to build a real brand with real ownership. Her partner is one of the most powerful luxury groups in the world, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, LVMH. Behind many of the world's most famous luxury labels, LVMH had decades of experience building global brands. Through its beauty incubator, Kendo Brands, the conglomerate had already helped launch several successful makeup companies. What LVMH possessed was manufacturing power, distribution networks, and industry expertise. But it lacked something. What it lacked was cultural energy, and that's where Rihanna came in. The structure of their partnership was very different from the usual celebrity endorsement deals the beauty world was used to. Instead of accepting a small royalty, Rihanna negotiated something far more powerful: ownership. She secured a joint venture agreement that gave her 50% of the brand itself, and that meant every product sold, every expansion, every increase in company value directly benefited her. Every dollar the brand created would be split in half for the company, half for Rihanna. It was a really bold decision, and at the time, almost no one realized just how important that choice would become. Because what came next didn't just launch a beauty brand, it forced the entire cosmetics industry to rethink how it operated. But the real shock was still coming. In September 2017, Rihanna introduced the world to a new cosmetics brand, Fenty Beauty. The beauty industry expected the usual celebrity rollout: a small product line, a few glamorous launch parties, some media attention, and maybe a brief spike in sales before the excitement faded. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Fenty Beauty launched with 40 different foundation shades. At the time, most luxury makeup brands offered fewer than 20. Some offered even less. So when customers walked into stores and saw 40 shades displayed side by side, the message was impossible to miss. This brand wasn't built for one type of customer. It was built for everyone. From the lightest skin tones to the deepest, from cool undertones to warm, from people who had always found their shade easily to people who had spent years mixing products just to come close. Consumers noticed immediately. Social media exploded with reactions. Makeup artists praised the range. Customers shared photos showing that, for the first time, they had found a perfect match. But here's what made the moment even more remarkable. The beauty industry noticed too. Within weeks, competing companies began expanding their own shade ranges. Brands that had ignored the issue for decades suddenly rushed to catch up. The shift became so dramatic that it earned its own nickname: the Fenty Effect. And yet, the revolution had only just begun. Because the way Fenty Beauty launched was just as disruptive as the product itself. Most new beauty brands start small. They launch in a handful of stores, test the market, and slowly expand if demand grows. Fenty Beauty did the exact opposite. From the very beginning, the brand went global. The launch happened simultaneously in 600 stores across 17 countries, including major retailers like Sephora and Harvey Nichols. It was an enormous gamble. If the brand failed, the failure would happen on a massive stage. But if it succeeded, the impact would be immediate, and the results? They were staggering. Within the first month, Fenty Beauty generated 72 million in sales. Within 15 months, revenue had climbed to roughly 570 million. Few beauty brands in modern history had ever grown that quickly. But the most important change wasn't hidden in the sales numbers. It was happening in culture. Before Fenty Beauty, diversity in cosmetics had often been treated as a niche market. After Fenty Beauty, it became the expectation. Consumers no longer asked whether brands offered inclusive shade ranges. They demanded it. And suddenly, the beauty industry understood something it had ignored for years. Inclusivity wasn't just a social idea, it was a billion-dollar business strategy. Rihanna's invisible role. One of the biggest misconceptions about celebrity brands is that the celebrity behind the label isn't truly involved, and in many cases, that assumption is correct. Because a company creates the product. Executives handle the business decisions. Marketing teams design the campaigns, and the celebrity simply appears in advertisements, promotes the product online, and collects a royalty check. But when Rihanna built Fenty Beauty, she approached the process very differently. From the very beginning, she treated the brand as something personal, something she intended to build, not simply promote. And that difference shaped everything that followed. Behind the scenes, Rihanna became deeply involved in nearly every stage of the brand's development. From product development to packaging design to shade testing to marketing campaigns. Instead of simply approving finished products, she worked closely with the teams creating them. Formulas were tested repeatedly to ensure the shades worked across different undertones. Packaging was examined for both beauty and practicality. Products were adjusted until they met the exact standard she envisioned. Rihanna didn't just approve products, she helped build them. Industry insiders who worked on the brand often describe her as intensely detail-oriented. Nothing launches unless it aligns with her vision. But her attention to detail didn't come from nowhere. In interviews, Rihanna has often explained that one of the earliest inspirations behind Fenty Beauty came from someone much closer to home: her mother, Monica Braithwaite. Growing up in Barbados, Rihanna watched her mother work in the beauty industry as a cosmetics counter supervisor. As a child, she often sat nearby while her mother helped customers find the right products for their skin. She watched women come in searching for shades that matched their complexions. Her mother wasn't an exception. She saw how important it was when someone finally found a product that worked for them. Those moments stayed with her. Years later, Rihanna explained that watching her mother help people discover confidence through beauty left a lasting impression. It showed her that makeup was never just about cosmetics. It was about identity. It was about representation. And it was about making people feel seen. That early exposure helped shape the philosophy behind Fenty Beauty long before the company even existed. So when Rihanna eventually began building her own brand, she carried those memories with her. The goal wasn't just to create makeup, it was to create products that worked for everyone who had ever felt overlooked by the beauty industry. That level of personal involvement created something unusual for a celebrity brand: authenticity. Customers didn't feel like they were buying makeup from a corporation hiding behind a famous face. They felt like they were buying from Rihanna herself, and that subtle difference had a powerful effect, because authenticity builds trust and trust builds loyalty. But the product itself was only part of the strategy: the power of cultural marketing. But what truly amplified Fenty Beauty's success was its cultural marketing. For decades, beauty advertising had followed a narrow formula. Campaigns typically showcased a limited definition of beauty. Models often looked similar. Skin tones were rarely shown across a wide spectrum. Body diversity was minimal. The message was subtle but clear: beauty followed a single standard. But Fenty Beauty rejected that idea completely. Instead of presenting diversity as a temporary campaign theme, the brand built its entire identity around it. Advertising campaigns featured a wide range of people: different skin tones, different body types, different genders, different cultural backgrounds. Models with freckles, models with deep complexions, models with undertones that had rarely been represented in beauty advertising before. But what made these campaigns powerful wasn't just the diversity, it was how naturally it was presented. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt like a corporate slogan. It felt real, as if the brand was simply reflecting the world as it actually exists. And for millions of customers, that moment felt deeply personal. For the first time, many people saw themselves represented in a luxury beauty brand. That feeling created a connection that went far beyond product quality. Because when a brand makes people feel seen, they don't just become customers, they become loyal supporters. And that loyalty became one of the most powerful engines behind Fenty Beauty's growth. After its explosive debut, the brand didn't slow down. Instead, it expanded aggressively. New products followed quickly. Concealers designed to complement the foundation line. Highlighters that matched the brand's inclusive shade philosophy. Lip products that became instant favorites among beauty communities. Eventually, the brand expanded further into skincare, building a broader beauty ecosystem. But product expansion was only part of the strategy. The real engine of growth was engagement. Fenty Beauty embraced the digital world in a way many traditional beauty brands struggled to adapt to. Social media became a major platform for interaction. Influencers created tutorials. Makeup artists demonstrated techniques using Fenty products. Fans shared their own looks online. Every post reinforced the sense that the brand wasn't distant or corporate. It was part of an ongoing conversation. Limited edition product drops also helped maintain excitement. Certain collections were released in smaller quantities, creating anticipation and urgency among customers. Many of these launches sold out within hours. The excitement fueled constant discussion online, and that attention kept the brand at the center of beauty culture. Slowly but steadily, Fenty Beauty became far more than a cosmetics company. It became a movement, and the numbers reflected that success. By the early 2020s, Fenty Beauty had reached a valuation of approximately $2.8 billion. Because Rihanna owns half the company, her stake alone was worth around $1.4 billion. That wealth didn't come from music, it didn't come from concert tours, and it didn't come from streaming platforms. It came from business, from a cosmetics company built on inclusion, authenticity, and a founder who refused to follow the traditional celebrity brand playbook. What began as an idea inspired partly by her mother's work in beauty had grown into one of the most influential brands in the modern cosmetics industry. And in the process, Rihanna had done something few entertainers ever achieve. She didn't just build a brand, she built an empire, scaling a billion-dollar brand. For most global superstars, success follows a familiar rhythm: release an album, go on tour, win awards, repeat the cycle. But the story of Rihanna took a very different turn. Ironically, her rise as a business mogul happened during a period when she was releasing almost no new music. Her last full studio album, Anti, arrived in 2016 and quickly became one of the defining albums of her career. Fans expected another project soon after, but the next album never came. Years passed. Instead of returning to the recording studio, Rihanna shifted her attention somewhere else entirely: business. That decision quietly changed the trajectory of her career. Because while the world waited for the next Rihanna album, she was building companies. At the center of that strategy was Fenty Beauty. The cosmetics brand had already exploded onto the global stage, redefining the beauty industry with its inclusive shade range and cultural marketing. But Rihanna didn't see it as a single success. She saw it as the foundation of something larger, like an ecosystem, a portfolio of brands connected by a shared philosophy. Soon, new ventures followed. She expanded into skincare with Fenty Skin, applying the same inclusive and accessible approach to a different segment of the beauty industry. Then came lingerie. With Savage X Fenty, Rihanna entered a market that had long been dominated by companies that promoted a narrow image of beauty and body type. Instead of following that formula, Savage X Fenty showcased models of different sizes, shapes, ethnicities, and gender identities. Runway shows looked more like cultural celebrations than traditional fashion events. And just like Fenty Beauty, the brand connected deeply with audiences who felt overlooked by the traditional industry. Across each of these ventures, a clear philosophy emerged: inclusivity, bold marketing, direct cultural connection. Rihanna wasn't simply launching products. She was building brands that spoke directly to modern consumers. And together, those companies transformed her financial profile. She wasn't just one of the most famous musicians in the world anymore. She was becoming one of the richest. But the real secret behind the empire becomes clearer when you step back and look at the pattern behind her decisions. Because Rihanna's strategy follows a very specific blueprint. She doesn't chase trends. She identifies structural gaps. The beauty industry ignored diverse skin tones for decades. Fenty Beauty filled that gap. The lingerie industry often ignored body inclusivity. Savage X Fenty challenged that. In each case, Rihanna entered a massive global industry that was already worth billions. But instead of competing for the exact same customers as everyone else, she targeted the segments that had been overlooked, the people who had been ignored, the consumers who rarely saw themselves represented. And that strategy is incredibly powerful. Because when you serve customers who feel invisible in the marketplace, something extraordinary happens. They don't just buy your product, they support your mission, they promote your brand, they become advocates. And advocacy is one of the most powerful forms of marketing any company can have. But the impact of Fenty Beauty didn't stop with Rihanna's own success. It also changed the entire cosmetics industry. Before Fenty Beauty launched, many major makeup brands offered limited shade ranges. Products were often designed for a narrow slice of the market. Diversity in advertising existed, but it was inconsistent. That changed almost overnight after Fenty's debut. Suddenly, companies across the industry began expanding their foundation lines. Shade ranges grew wider. Marketing campaigns began highlighting more diverse models. Inclusivity became a central conversation across beauty brands. But that shift didn't happen simply because companies suddenly changed their values. It happened because Fenty Beauty proved something the industry could no longer ignore. Inclusivity wasn't just ethical, it was profitable. For decades, the beauty industry had unintentionally overlooked millions of customers. Rihanna built a brand specifically for them, and those customers responded with extraordinary loyalty. Sales surged, demand grew, competitors rushed to adapt. What started as a cosmetics launch had turned into a cultural shift. But behind all of this influence lies one of the most important business lessons in the Fenty story: ownership. Rihanna didn't just build influence, she built equity. The billion-dollar lesson. When she partnered with Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy LVMH to launch Fenty Beauty through Kendo brands, she negotiated something many celebrities never think to request: a 50% ownership stake. That decision changed everything. Because every time the company grows in value, her personal wealth grows with it. Every new product, every expansion into new markets, every surge in revenue, all of it increases the value of the company she partially owns. And that is the difference between endorsing a product and owning a business. Endorsements create short-term income. Ownership creates long-term wealth. That difference is precisely why Fenty Beauty played such a major role in turning Rihanna into a billionaire. Not simply because she was famous, but because she structured the business correctly from the very beginning. And the empire she built is still evolving. Even today, the Fenty ecosystem continues to expand. New product categories are constantly being explored. The brand has moved beyond cosmetics into areas like skincare and fragrance. Retail partnerships continue to grow across global markets, and analysts believe the Fenty portfolio could expand significantly over the next decade. Because the foundation of the brand isn't just makeup, it's cultural relevance, and cultural relevance is one of the most valuable assets any company can possess. Trends change. Products evolve. But brands that maintain a deep cultural connection with their audience often endure for generations. That is the quiet strength behind the Fenty empire. Which brings us to the most important lesson in this entire story. The story of Fenty Beauty isn't really about cosmetics. It's about vision. Rihanna saw something the beauty industry had ignored for decades. A massive group of customers who felt invisible. People who struggled to find foundation shades that matched their skin. People who rarely saw themselves represented in advertising. People who had been quietly overlooked by billion-dollar companies. Instead of waiting for the industry to change, he built a company that forced it to. And in just a few years, that decision created a brand valued at roughly $2.8 billion. It also helped transform Rihanna into one of the most successful entrepreneurs in modern entertainment. But perhaps the most remarkable part of the story is this. She didn't build the empire during the peak of her music career. She built it while the world was waiting for her next album. While fans debated when she would return to the studio, Rihanna was quietly building something far bigger than a chart-topping single. She wasn't just creating another celebrity brand, she was building an empire. One foundation shade at a time. That's it about the $2.8 billion beauty empire Rihanna built alone. Have you ever used Fenty Beauty's product? Tell us in the comments section. Smash that like button if you enjoyed watching this video, and subscribe for more stories like this.